Today on Rise Up, Sacred Dialogues, we continue the recent lecture of the Riser and discuss his teachings. Next, Faith and Art. Believers around the world express their faith through music and song. And finally, we delve into Chapter 2 of the Mahdi's Manifesto and understand the true significance of a covenant with God. This is Rise Up.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rise Up. I'm Alia Halal.
Good morning. Welcome to Rise Up. I'm Irfan Alamgir.
Now, we have quite a lot that we wanted to talk about today, but before we get into the various teachings and principles of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light that we like to discuss here on Rise Up, it's quite necessary that we go over some breaking news that has taken place recently, and it has to do with members of this religion, of the call of Imam al-Mahdi, who are very dedicated followers of the riser Abdullah Hashem Alsadiq, and they are being persecuted once again. So should we just jump right into the headlines?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's put the first headline on the screen. So as you can see, these are three brothers, Sajjad, Ali and Mansoor. They've been arrested in Turkey and they have already gone through quite a bit of persecution. Perhaps a bit of context there over who they are, why they're in Turkey, the fact that they have been, well, they're not supposed to be in Turkey, are they? They are only in Turkey because they've been persecuted in their own home countries. And now they have...
So they're seeking sanctuary in Turkey, basically?
Yes, exactly. So they are forced to be in Turkey at the moment because of the fact that in their own home countries they would be quite possibly even executed for the fact that they believe in Alsadiq, which is absolute insanity. Let's go on to the news itself. Okay, let's go ahead.
So in a disturbing act of religious persecution, members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, a peaceful religious community, have been targeted by local authorities in Isparta, Turkey. This morning, three individuals, Sajid Jafri, Ali Lakzain and Mansoor Degan, were detained by police in connection with their peaceful missionary activities, which are fully protected under international law. At approximately 9:30 a.m., police officers arrived at the home of Mansoor Degan and forcibly entered after repeated knocking on the door. The authorities detained him and transported him to the local security department. The officers claimed they were questioning him due to activities of Sajjad, Ali, who had visited the house and allegedly put up posters promoting their faith.
Wow.
Okay. The members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light have a fundamental right to freely manifest their religion and beliefs as guaranteed under Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which includes the freedom to share and promote their faith through peaceful activities such as distributing literature and putting up posters. These rights are not dependent on obtaining permission from local authorities. However, the police in Isparta have unjustly targeted these individuals for peacefully expressing their religious beliefs. Wanna go?
Sure. During the interrogation, authorities revealed they had been monitoring the group's activities for weeks. My goodness. Further illustrating the targeted nature of the harassment. In a further attempt to intimidate, the authorities pressured the individuals to sign documents without legal counsel. When a lawyer was called, the authorities revised the documents, exposing their attempts to manipulate the situation. Although the detained members were initially released, they were later transferred to a detention center where they are subjected to further interrogation. Sajjad and Ali, who had planned to leave Isparta, were unable to depart and were also taken into custody. The detainees are awaiting transfer to a removal camp where they will be held until a decision is made regarding their deportation. If deported, these members face the risk of lengthy prison sentences and possible execution by the Iranian regime, who had declared members of the faith heretic and issued prison sentences against them.
This incident is part of a larger pattern of harassment faced by the members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light in Turkey. These three members were previously part of the 104 members who were arbitrarily detained in 2023 for 5 months in Turkey. Their eventual release came only after significant international pressure, including intervention by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion or Belief, calling upon Turkey not to deport members of the faith. The Ahmadi religion of peace and light condemns these actions as a clear violation of the right of freedom of religion and belief, which includes the right to engage in peaceful missionary work, share religious messages. The Turkish authorities' actions contradict both international law and Turkey's obligations under human rights treatises. The Ahmadi religion of peace and light calls on the international community to stand in solidarity with those being unjustly targeted for their religious beliefs and demands that Turkish authorities end the harassment of its members, halt the planned deportation, and uphold the right of religious freedom as a fundamental human right.
And just imagining the fact that this is something that can happen in 2025, where you could be sitting at home and then you could have aggressive police officers at your doorstep knocking repeatedly and forcibly entering into the house, taking you into custody and arresting you, putting you into prison, and saying that, or even a detainment center, which is the case here, and saying that the decision of whether or not you'll be deported back to a country where it is absolutely certain that you will be arrested and you will face punishment and consequences and even possibly execution. The fact that this can happen for putting a poster up on a wall in a country like Turkey in this day and age is absolutely ridiculous and extraordinarily shameful, and really something to think about. It's something that enrages us. It's offensive to us on so many levels. The mere fact that a human being cannot put a poster up somewhere just reminds us of an Orwellian society where there are people watching you and the thought police are running after you, trying to grab you before you think for yourselves by accident. And this is so absolutely appalling that it is taking place, and it's very necessary that there be some noise about it, because if we're still living in a world where a piece of paper is so frightening to authorities, then it really begs the question of whether those authorities should be there in the first place, and whether or not we're doing the right thing by allowing that this be the case in a progressive world, in a world where people are going towards prosperity, or attempting to understand how to be enlightened, attempting to understand how to keep society in an advanced kind of place. At the moment, it looks like we're just going backwards. And it's really devastating. In a place like Turkey that basically tries to boast its so-called European values or its Western values and ideals, it doesn't look like that's the case at the moment.
Yes, and in the past, people did seek sanctuary in Turkey, number one, because it's got a border with the European Union, and it does allow and afford that opportunity to protest or to even seek asylum within that land, hoping to get ultimately to a destination within Europe where the rule of law and the rights of human beings tend to be more closely safeguarded than perhaps the Middle East. And this is, of course, the case. And reading that article that we read there with the three brothers who have been detained, it seems that brother Ali and Sajjad had no intentions of staying in Turkey. They were about to depart, and in their time when they were about to set off, they were actually called in, hauled in, and told to give an account of why they are putting up these posters that are threatening to the state of Turkey and against its values and beliefs. And I would have loved to eavesdrop on that conversation. It would have been an interesting one, because the brothers would have said, look, this is the message of the Prophet Muhammad that we are trying to propagate in the end of times, when he said the following, that in the end times that guidance would be taken away and that people will forget the true Islam. And then the Mahdi is a character that emerges. He's mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad, and so on and so forth. It would have been really interesting to see if they were given an opportunity to speak, how they would have reacted to the news of the emergence of the Mahdi, the prophesied savior, of course, within the Islamic religion, the man who comes to correct the true understanding of religion and to free the people from bondage and slavery to the powerful and the clerics of the religion who corrupt the religion. So I think this is something that has to take place in countries like Turkey now more than ever before, and not just Turkey but also in Iran, and these two so-called Islamic countries have really taken the baton to the truth in this day and age, and they don't want any part of it, and they don't want it in their country, and they will detain you and they will torture you in their encampments, in their detention centers. And it's something that is really truly disturbing, because the message that these people are propagating is not an alien one, it's one deeply rooted in the tradition that they profess to follow.
And let's remember something here, which is that if Turkey is what it says it is, which is an advanced country, a country where society is more free than in other places, a country that does have Islamic values, but at the same time it professes freedom of belief, then it is very disturbing and alarming that a piece of paper on the wall, a poster that says the Mahdi has appeared, and that is the message that these individuals are spreading. They're saying that the Mahdi has appeared, this is our belief, and this is a poster with a QR code on it. If you want to check it out, go ahead and check it out. There is no indication of anything to do with violence, anything to do with intolerance, anything to do with a certain value that might be negative for society at large or might be damaging for the people. None of that whatsoever. It is merely the fact that there is a belief in a man whose name is Abdullah Hashem of Alsadiq that is so threatening and so disturbing to the Turkish authorities that they see it fit to stop everything else they're doing, walk up to someone's house, knock on the door and forcibly enter. And the amount of time and resources that they're willing to pour into an activity like this one really makes you question their decision-making processes, considering the fact that there are so many other issues that they have to deal with in the country. It clearly goes to show that there is something about this message and about this call that Turkey as a whole, as a government, is finding threatening. So much so that they would actually take out from their time and resources to go after three men who, let's not forget, have already suffered so much trauma in their lives, so much persecution, so much oppression. They have been exiled from their homes. They have been thrown aside by their nations. They have lost family. They have lost friends. They have gone through the cold of the winter. They have been beaten down in prison cells. They have run away from near-death experiences. They have been so brutally treated in detainment centers and in Turkey. They have been so oppressed already by the authorities, who very shamefully then had to back off from their decision initially to deport these people, because once word had gotten out to human rights organizations, once statements had been made at the United Nations Human Rights Council, once people were making noise about what was going on in that detainment center with the 104, the Turkish court had to issue that statement that said, we retract our decision to deport these innocent men and women. Now, yet again, they have the audacity to run after these three innocent men for putting a poster up on the walls of Turkey. That is really something to be ashamed of, and unfortunately not surprising, because it is the creed of the prophets and messengers. It is the creed of the companions of the vicegerent of God on earth that they are oppressed and persecuted by those two usual suspects, the rulers of the time and the non-working scholars, who are hand in hand in this regard. So unfortunately for the authorities in Turkey, if you are offended by the idea that there are believers in the Ahmadi religion of peace and light in your country, then know that the spotlight is very much on you, and you will be questioned about it at some point in time.
Yeah, it had to take the UN to intervene on behalf of the religion of peace and light before the Turkish authorities relented in their brutal persecution of members of our religion. And the United Nations did certainly shed a light on the grievances of these people who were merely saying that, look, we believe that there is only one God and that the Mahdi is the proof of God in this day and age, and this is the reason why we have had to flee from our homes, because our lives on the ground had been turned into a living hell, and we are seeking justice. We are seeking to find a place where we can practice our faith. I mean, this is the extent, the be-all and end-all of the request of these innocent people. It wasn't anything more than that. And had they been given the opportunity to practice their faith in their homeland, they would not have left their homeland. I mean, who wants to leave their home country, their familiar surroundings, the place where they can really practice in peace, right?
It's tragic.
One of the most stressful things in life events that come after the death of a loved one on the hierarchy of things in a survey that was done medically when you want to assess somebody's stress levels is moving houses.
Wow.
And moving houses even within the same country is stressful. Imagine shifting to a new culture, to a new climate, to new surroundings, how much that of a toll that can take on you. And this is what has been happening in mass to the followers of our faith. They have not been allowed to live in peace. Merely going to the supermarket, you are being followed, all eyes are on you, and the police will just come out of the blue, out of the blind spot, and start asking you questions, and then take you to the police station, make you write a statement, and then use that statement to come in the early hours and watches of the night to arrest you on whatever basis, on whatever trumped up charges that they have up their sleeve. So this is what the people were fleeing from. They just wanted to live in peace and practice their religion, nothing more, nothing less. And this apparently is enough of a request to put people in detention camps without legal representation and to be tortured. This is not an exaggeration, this is a fact, and this is why the United Nations was keen to aid us and assist us in calling for justice on behalf of these beleaguered immigrants and people who are seeking asylum, the true refugee in the truest form of the word, refugees against an intensely brutal persecution in their homeland.
And part of the call of Imam al-Mahdi, part of the reason why we do what we do is because human life is sacred, and the ability to live a dignified human life is a very sacred thing that is being discarded very recklessly and ruthlessly these days, and has been the case for a long time, that people are treated like subhuman. They are cast aside as unimportant, and that is a great threat to freedom. That is a great threat to the idea of being able to express who you are as a human being and actually move on to the next level of enlightenment and be able to create a better world, a world where there is progress, a world where there is advancement. There is a very good reason why in the Holy Quran God very emphatically states that there is no compulsion in religion. The reason that he says that is because it is in fact an Islamic ideal. And any place where religious freedom is suffocated, is pushed aside, is not allowed to prosper, if that religious freedom is stolen from you or taken away from you, snatched away from you, it is an indication that something very ungodly is taking place. It is not from the divine to force people into a creed or into a belief system. So it's fascinating that this has become the new face of Islam in this day and age. That if you want to be Islamic, if you want to be considered part of a Muslim government or a Muslim land or state, it has to be forced on the people that they be a certain way. Otherwise, it will not be tolerated. And that is the furthest thing from true Islam. And the true Islam is what we see, where we find that the Qaim of the family of Muhammad, Alsadiq, Abdullah Hashem Alsadiq, is actually standing up saying, look, people have the right to believe what they want to believe, as long as it is in a moral way, as long as it is humane. There is no reason to stop them from believing what they wish to believe in. In fact, if you read The Goal of the Wise and you actually read about the divine just state, which is what we are working towards and building, part of being in the divine just state is that there is actual true religious freedom. And there isn't the idea of you have to believe in this religion, otherwise you're not part of the divine just state. Once there is an actual state where people are able to live in harmony together, under the ideal of humanity first, then it wouldn't be a question of why did you put a poster on the wall. That would not be something that would be a reason to persecute someone. And it's very sad that in the countries that the supposed Muslims look down on and consider immoral and consider wrong and consider pagan countries in the West, where they look at them and they say, oh, those are disbelievers. It is those disbelievers from whom are coming the believers, and who are allowing religious freedom. You can walk through the streets of the United Kingdom, of America, of Canada, and how many of the Ansar are putting posters up all over these places? You go to Turkey, you put one poster up and you have the police barging in and taking you in. They're very efficient when it comes to that.
Yes, they are. And look, here's a question. It's a simple thing. I mean, if somebody's putting up posters of Adolf Hitler or another tyrant or somebody who has committed mass atrocities against mankind, then of course we would be the first to say that this needs to be removed. This is an offensive poster. But if there is complete ignorance on why someone is putting up a poster on which it says allegiances to God, then this is something that really one has to look into themselves, at their own soul, and ask the question, what could these people be talking about? Because that is the least of the actions that need to be done in response to somebody who is saying, look, we believe that only God, that supremacy on earth is for God, and He is the one who chooses and appoints. And this is a beautiful philosophy, and this is the philosophy of Islam, of Christianity, of Judaism, and of every world religion, and always has been, always will be. So that's number one. And then they have the figure or the image of a man who is wearing a beanie, who has a beard. Okay, well, who is this man? What has he done? What has he done for mankind? What does he intend to do for mankind? Well, let's look at some of his work. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it on the radio stations, on the news media, on social media. Let's really explore what he has to say before we start treating his message like the message of some tyrant from a bygone era, you know. This is something that is, these posters are designed to do. They are designed to raise awareness. They are designed to induce questions for those people living in oppression and persecution to say, maybe, just maybe, this could be the Mahdi that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, spoke about and prophesied the coming of in the end times. And if that happens, then the objective has been achieved, the objective of spreading the news of the greatest news that you could ever hope to receive. This is the news of the news. This is the mother of all the news. So once you understand that the Mahdi has arrived, this is a source of great celebration and jubilation, and it should be for every single person who calls themselves a Muslim, whether they are on the extreme liberal left, secular left, as in Turkey, or the other side of the extreme in kind of conservative backwater Taliban Afghanistan.
And that's not what we are hoping to achieve for this world. We're hoping to achieve something much greater. And this is why we are now working very hard on the case of these three dear brothers to ourselves. And we are hoping for quick resolution. We're hoping that they can be given their due rights very quickly. And we're working on that. So we'll be updating you on their progress. We'll be keeping you informed of what's taking place with them. And inshallah, very soon there will be good news. And God is with us. And there is no might nor power except in God. So yes, that is the news regarding our community.
And let this be a proof upon the believers, Alia. Let this be another proof that those being persecuted in this day and age, the prophets and messengers were the persecuted ones, and the religion that is facing persecution at the highest level is this one that has come forward with this message, like I said, of allegiances to God. Why? Why is this religion the focus of all of the nations that profess to be Muslims? Why are they the targets?
Exactly.
Why are they being imprisoned? Why are they being tortured? Why are they being killed in certain countries? And why are all these death threats which are being issued towards us and other types of threats, and some of them have been acted upon? Why is this happening in this time to these people? This is a very important question. It's another proof that Jesus said it in the Gospels. Isa alayhi salam, he said that when the light of the world comes in, you know, the evil forces, they're attracted to it and they want to put out the light of God. And this is something that is always going to happen in every day and age, and it's a proof that this is the call in this time that calls to the true message of God, as it has always done in every age.
And also, I think it's interesting that Turkey is not unfamiliar with the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. I mean, there have been members of this religion in that country for a bit, and the whole incident at the border and the whole thing that happened with the 104, I'm pretty sure they know very well who they're dealing with and the kind of things that these members have gone through. I mean, they've been told over and over again in various platforms that this is the case, and The media are aware of this religion in Turkey. The government is aware. The court is aware. There's no reason for them to act surprised or as if they're very naive to the fact that this is actually a peaceful religion that calls for humanity first. They're absolutely aware of that, and despite the fact that they are aware, they're still behaving in this very ridiculous manner. So honestly, shame on Turkey.
The 104 is a very symbolic number. It is, and it will go down in history, right? And the 104, where they will be, where they were detained, is Turkey, and therefore Turkey will always go down in a negative light for persecuting these 104 individuals who recognized that allegiance is to God in their time, and they recognized the Imam of the time. And for this, they were punished by putting into a detention center and treated worse than animals. And this is a big. This is a tragedy, and you can tell that like you said, they know exactly who the 104 are. They probably have a case file on every single person.
Absolutely.
And so whenever they appear in whichever part of the country, they will immediately be taken into detainment. And this is something that's happened, so it's not really a surprise, but it's also at the same time, it's a disturbing piece of news, and it's, again, a very disappointing action by the Turkish state.
Absolutely. So that's in terms of our believing community around the world. That's in terms of our brothers and sisters and what's happening with them and with the religion. Once again, we will be keeping you updated, but you can stay updated also on by checking out the Divine Just State magazine. So you can go to divinejuststate.com, and you'll find that on that magazine you'll get all those regular updates that you need of what's going on a day-to-day basis. Now, moving on to global headlines and what's going on around the world in general, there's quite a bit of information that perhaps would be useful to the public that we could discuss and expand on today.
Yeah, I mean, now we mentioned, I kind of alluded to the Afghanistan that is on the other end of the right-wing extreme. Look, here's the thing. You've got Turkey on one extreme and Taliban on the other extreme, you know, and wisdom, Aristotle said, lies between two extremes. And this is something that we're seeing in many parts of the world. It's the way that Iblis has set up the world, where there's a tug of war between extreme ideologies, and one ideology prevails in one time, and then people go to the other extreme expecting a different result, and it takes actually makes things even worse. And as the pendulum swings between these two extremes, the person and the people who get battered into submission are the average people in the middle who just want peace, who just want to practice their faith, who want to live in a world that is free from all of these troubles that we are seeing. And in the land of Afghanistan, which has also been a place which has persecuted to extreme levels members of the religion of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, there is a very disturbing headline that is coming out, and if we could bring it up on the screen, Ali, if you just read the headline for me.
Taliban minister forced to flee Afghanistan after speech in support of girls' education. Mohammad Abbas Tanikzai, Taliban's deputy foreign minister, left for UAE after criticizing ban on secondary school and higher education for girls. That's so sad. Yeah,
so this is a senior Taliban minister, and he expressed a deep kind of resentment towards this ban on girls' education in Afghanistan. And he said, speaking at a graduation ceremony near the Afghan-Pakistani border, that the Taliban's stance is completely unjust. He said, how can you deprive 20 million people of an education?
Wow. 20 million.
20 million. And it's basically, you've got primary school, high school, and then further education. In Afghanistan, they only allow girls to finish primary education. So by the age of 10, 11, they are expected, in some cases much less, they're expected to stop their education and then do what the Afghani government, the Taliban, considers to be the right course of action, let's just say. And this individual stood up and said, I think this is a grave injustice. We are depriving 20 million of our citizens, our future, the people who are going to take this country forward, of a basic education. In the United Kingdom, education is mandatory until the age of 18. We are expected to be in some kind of training, whether it's vocational training or studying up to A levels and then getting into further education in university. But at 18, you're expected to study until that age. And these are the formative years. These are the years where, learning is done best. And this is what the people in Afghanistan are not getting. The women in Afghanistan are not worthy to receive an education. And I was interested, Alia, to think that, to hear your perspective as a woman who is a believer in this call. What do you make of this extremely backward, barbaric injustice against these girls who have been told that they must stay at home and learn how to become, women in the way that the Islamic model is projected by the Taliban?
I think it just honestly makes me extraordinarily grateful for the fact that we have with us the Savior of mankind, because this is not a small problem. This is an absolute disease that exists, and it's a mindset. It's not just an idea of there is a country called Afghanistan where there's a regime going on where this is taking place. This is a serious issue that exists in cultures where Islam is propagated right now. And for those out there who might be hearing what I say, and then they say to themselves, no, but I'm a Muslim who believes in equality, and I'm a Muslim who believes in respecting women, and that women have rights as well. You cannot survive in today's world with the ideology of mainstream Islam and also profess to be a mainstream Muslim with that ideology, because it doesn't exist. It is not part of the infrastructure of mainstream Islam today in any shape or form. Anyone who wants to be a so-called progressive Muslim has to break away from traditional mainstream Islamic understanding. And I keep using the word mainstream because we are absolutely adamant on the fact that this is not authentic Islam. This is not the true Islam that came with Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And the riser of Alsadiq is here today to re-establish what was actually meant to be established by Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, because when they did come and they did promote the true teachings of God, it was immediately suffocated, and the movement, the true movement of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, was cast aside and in fact pushed aside by the Bani Umayyah and the Bani Abbasis and all of these tyrannical regimes that took place right after. And the idea is that in this world right now, if you want to believe that there is something called equality and there is something called equal opportunity and these kinds of ideas and concepts, then you have to realize that it's impossible to apply those concepts without a leader. Without someone who can make sense of what's happening. Religion has become so murky and so confused and muddled up. People don't know how to make sense of it, and they don't know how to place it in a society that wants to progress any longer, because you are using archaic models of mainstream religion that have been corrupted and trying to force them into a society that wants to move forward, and it will not work. The only thing that will work is there be a living man, a living messenger who is a man, who can take religion, the true form of religion, and say, this is how you apply God's teachings in society. And this is how society can progress, because they both go hand in hand. You don't have to sacrifice one for the sake of the other. That's absolutely ridiculous. To assume that. And this is a wonderful example of that there be a man saying, hey, like this minister, he said something good. He said, hey, let's give girls a chance to study. I mean, these are the future mothers of our grandchildren. Let's allow them to actually know what's going on in the world and be a little bit intelligent. And he has to flee the country for it. Incredible. Yeah, and he said some other things as well, which are really heartening to hear. And he paid a penalty for his statements, but he said it publicly. And he felt like he had to. He felt like he had a position in a podium where his voice would be heard. And well, good for him.
Yeah, really good for him. And he was hoping that other people would respond if he took that first step. You know, one courageous person stands up and suddenly there's a crowd behind them.
There's a voice to follow at least. Exactly.
And unfortunately in this case it didn't happen, because it was the same story as before, like the revolution that we always speak about in Egypt, the Arab Spring. They said had a leader been present, there would have been a mass gathering behind him and success. Unfortunately, this individual did not have that backing and support. Actually, if we bring his image back up, I wanted to read something very interesting that he said. This is, of course, Muhammad, what was his surname? It's Stanikzai. So he said, during the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, the doors of knowledge were open for both men and women. There were such remarkable women that if I were to elaborate on their contributions, it would take a considerable amount of time. After the speech, the reports of Staniczai criticizing the Taliban's supreme leader, Hibatullah Akhundzada, allegedly ordered this minister's arrest and issued a travel ban which pushed Staniczai to leave Afghanistan for the UAE. Staniczai confirmed to local media he had left for Dubai but claimed it was for health reasons. The Taliban were contacted for further comment but did not respond. Since the Taliban's takeover in 2021, the rights of women and girls to education, work, travel and appearing in public have been severely curtailed. Last month, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor requested arrest warrants for the Taliban supreme leader and Afghanistan's chief justice on the grounds that the persecution of women and girls in Afghanistan is a crime against humanity.
Wow. The fact that, by the way, he said something pretty interesting there, which I completely agree with. He said that if we were to look at the achievements of women in history who have been in times of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and other great people, and the contributions that they have made to humanity, to society, if we look at them, then we can go on for hours and actually talk about it for hours. And he's not wrong. It is a fact.
It's an absolute fact. And depriving a child of an education, the ability to read and appraise material and then reach, having that critical thinking, which only comes through reading, comparing, contrasting, distinguishing between fact and opinion. These things only come with an education.
Of course.
The system of education we have many problems with, but a basic education, being able to read things that give some kind of sophistication to thinking is absolutely vital. What about somebody who reaches, they have a child, for example, and then they're reading in the news something about certain types of additives to food. Maybe they have the right not to buy that food for their child. Maybe they want to invest in something organic. Maybe they read something about the effects of a newly developed vaccine and they can weigh the pros and cons and make an informed choice. This is a basic human right, and to deprive, like you said earlier, our mothers and our daughters and our family of this basic human right is indeed, as the International Criminal Court said, a crime against humanity. And we also support that claim, and we have to say that these individuals that often, come up every now and then, like the Martin Luther Kings and the Gandhis and these types of individuals who have a positive message, it will only reach fruition if it is behind a man who is appointed by God. Had Imam Mahdi been holding their hand, there would have been a revolution in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan would have been the most advanced, progressive country on the face of the planet. They would have done interstellar travel by now. I do not exaggerate. This is the truth.
Elon Musk to it.
Right? They would have beaten everybody to it. But this is the fact. And there is a hadith that says, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said, pity poor Taliban, because there are people there with hearts of gold, with hearts solid in faith, but they are just covered with these horrific leaders and non-working scholars who brutally oppress them and imprison them and beat them and kill them. And this will end when the people of Afghanistan finally say enough is enough, and they choose Alsadiq, who is the Imam of the time, as their leader. And when this happens, who knows, maybe Afghanistan will become the place of the divine just state. Anything is possible, God willing.
And it just kind of, as you were speaking, it really sunk in the fact that we are, as people, so responsible right now. We're so utterly responsible. Whoever is hearing about the message of the appearance of the Mahdi, whoever is hoping for some kind of change in the world, we are so responsible for not falling into despair and not thinking that there's no way to help other people and there's no way to fix this world. We are so responsible for those little children in Afghanistan who are growing up in a society that is so barbaric and so confused. And it's not just Afghanistan, it's generally just all around us. This is the case. People are not understanding how to live anymore. We don't know. People don't know how to be human anymore. It's absolutely tragic. And it has to change. It can only change if we decide to do something about it. It can only change if we stand up and we ask ourselves, what are these people so afraid of? I mean, what are they afraid of? What will happen to Afghanistan if women could go outside and study? What would happen? What is so scary and threatening about a society to the Afghani authorities where women are able to actually have a voice and study and move forward in society and contribute and raise their children in a beautiful way because they're actually educated women who know what they're doing and support their husbands and their partners in raising a good, wholesome family. What is so scary about that? Something is very scary about that, because for centuries people have been trying to push that aside and saying, no, it's immoral, it is wrong, it is unrighteous, it is unholy. But what they do consider holy and righteous and moral is lashings and whippings and beatings and public executions and tormenting other human beings.
Stoning to death.
Stoning to death, honor killings.
Yes,
this is all considered
acid
very
attacks.
righteous.
Yeah,
and
these are things that we've seen.
And victim blaming. All of this is seen as very good and as if God is on that side of the fence. And He's absolutely not on that side of the fence. And people need to wake up to that and understand it. My goodness.
Yes, if in Afghanistan, if a woman is, for example, raped or something like this, you know, the first question they will pose to the woman is, were you, for example, beautifying yourself? Were you exposing yourself? Were you wearing perfume? God knows what they come to. And then after that, they blame the victim rather than the person who perpetrated the crime. And not just that, they are known to beat viciously with sticks made of thick, hardened wood that they have specifically designed for this purpose, to hit and beat into submission any woman who would dare speak up about her rights as she is given those rights in the Quran and by the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is something that they fear most. Their biggest fear, more than anything else, is a woman who is in a position to speak for the rights of women in that country. A woman who could be a lawyer, a woman who could be a minister, somebody who can represent the best interests of the females who are suffering a huge amount of oppression and persecution in that country. It really is a hellish existence. If you could imagine hell for a human being, it would be to be born as a girl in Afghanistan. And this is because of the sick, perverted, anti-Islamic interpretation, satanic interpretation of Islam that was, of course, derives from the Bakri or the Umar bin al-Khattab version of Islam, you know, who were known to beat people who were much weaker themselves into a state of, into a horrific state. And this is what their followers are now following in their footsteps. They take great pride in the fact that they say that Omar was the one who they used to fear and quake when he used to walk past the believers and the disbelievers. So this is something that they hold as a role model, and as such they follow in his footsteps. And this is something that we are very much against, and we are calling for a stop to this horrific treatment of women in Afghanistan in general. And the followers of this religion, oh my goodness, what they have to go through is just beyond imagining.
Yes, exactly. I mean, imagine saying you believe that Imam Mahdi has appeared in Afghanistan. It's not something that goes down very well, as we've seen in recent events, and it's something to really question now. And just to wrap up on that segment about the news regarding that minister in Afghanistan, let's just realize and remember that we as a people, as I said earlier, are extremely responsible. Any believer who can hear this message and who's thinking about how is it that I can help God or support God, first off, don't lose hope. Don't fall into despair and think that this cannot change or it will not change. Disregard the generational trauma of your ancestors and realize that change can happen. And there's no such thing as falling into despair and saying this is how things are and there's nothing we can do about it. Absolutely, there is not only something we can do about it, there is something we must do about it. And the people listening to this, the people who are aware of the fact that the Qaim of the family of Muhammad is here, are extremely responsible now to carry on their shoulders the duty of absolutely supporting this man in every shape and form possible. Anything you know that you can do to support Alsadiq right now, if you are a believer and you are hearing this message, do it today. Do today what you can do to support the message of humanity first, because it is not a time to be negligent. It is not a time to be regretful and remorseful in the future for being slow on the idea of doing something. Rush to the task of fulfilling God's command, of supporting the man sent by God, and you will see how beautiful it is that God's plans are. How God has always said that He is not the one to be waited for, but rather He is the one waiting for us to go ahead and make that first step. So let's not delay any longer. If you were waiting for that sign which said to you, hey, now's the time to do that thing that you were wondering if you should do it or not, this is your sign. Get up today and rise up today and do what you know. And everyone knows deep down what God is requiring from them. So wake up today and say, let's actually do it. Let's actually go ahead and make that change and cause that ripple effect. You are capable of causing a positive ripple effect. So do it. Go ahead and do it. Let's start it today. If you've been wondering when is the right time to start, trust me, the right time to start has long gone, and you are actually someone who should have done it by now. So knowing that, rise up and do it. Let's go ahead and do it together.
Absolutely. And if we have time, we can quickly go through the third news.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's go for it. Let's
I
bring
liked
it
the
up.
headline. It sounded exciting.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Well, here you go. Now, people in these Islamic lands that we've mentioned, like Turkey and Afghanistan, the people who live there are living in hell, and there's no denial. But they see the West as the land of milk and honey. And unfortunately, this is not the case. It is not heaven on earth until the man appointed by God rules in these lands.
Amen.
And this is what we believe and call for. And this news heading reflects what I'm about to say. So it says, levels of microplastics in human brains may be rapidly rising, a study suggests. Research looking at tissue from post-mortems between 1997 and 2024 finds an upward trend in contamination.
Wow.
So what's happening is that when people die, there are some researchers and scientists who perform post-mortems on these bodies, which means that they will take parts of their organs, tissues, samples, sections, and they will analyze them, and they will look for different things. They will look for if a person, for example, died of Alzheimer's disease or another condition like motor neuron disease. They will take samples from the brain and look at it under the microscope, and they will also extract chemicals from it. And in 1997, there was an initiative launched to look and see if this concern that was being spoken about at the time by environmentalists of the existence of these plastics, which were being used in the environment more than ever before. This kind of, when we've all seen those images, right, of those plastic crushed bottles on the side of the lakes and inside the fresh waters that we have, as well as in our rivers, streams, and seas. You can see these documentaries now and these docuseries about these environmental things where you've got these beautiful animals swimming in the oceans and there's plastic everywhere. So the question that was raised was, let's see if over time we can see the amount of these plastics that are contaminating the environment and see how they're increasing in tissue samples in people who are deceased. So they launched a study in 1997, and in 2024 they found a relationship that was something very alarming, and it showed that over time the amount of these micro and nanoplastics were increasing at an exponential rate in the cadavers in the dead deceased people that they were looking into, and specifically they were looking at the brain. And then we always think about, well, why is the incidence of all of these different conditions increasing, like epilepsy, like Alzheimer's disease, like motor neuron disease, like different types of autoimmune conditions that's driving the immune system essentially mad. The immune system is failing to recognize the cells that carry the body's passport as the national cells. They are seeing them as alien cells and they want to exterminate them. And this is what causes all of these problems when we talk about autoimmune disease. And not only, by the way, in the brain, they also found samples of these microplastics increasing in the liver, in the kidney. And also, interestingly, they found increasing levels over the last couple of decades in the placenta.
Oh my goodness.
And they found that those placentas that had higher levels of these microplastics were causing earlier births, premature births. And of course, we know that preterm babies have risks of getting different types of infections and different types of problems, and they are just more vulnerable in general and require much closer monitoring and care. And they've made this assumption now that the high levels of these microplastics in the placenta, which is of course that part that feeds the baby gets its nourishment from the mother via the placenta, which then feeds into the umbilical cord and then feeds the child. This is how the child grows and receives its nourishment. Very interesting. Now, they also found an increased level of these microplastics in the testes of men, and again increasing over time. Now, we know that sperm counts in men have been going down every single decade by huge amounts, and it's causing this spiking infertility rates in the Western countries, in particular where these studies have been done. New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America, and Europe. All of these countries have put forward these figures, and the trend is the same in every country. And this pollution of these plastics that the body cannot break down, that is entering into our brains and into the placenta of our pregnant women and into the testicles of men, it's causing huge problems in human society. They think about, well, you know, now you can relate it to everything. These forever chemicals, or PFAS, that we're hearing about increasingly in the news, these chemicals that the body cannot break down. The liver is extremely efficient at removing toxins from our system and from our bodies. But these forever chemicals are called forever chemicals because they remain in the body and cannot be broken down. We have these vapes that are being sold to our children that contain these same types of chemicals that essentially find their way into the body, into the lungs, and they cause these popcorn lung phenomenon that we're seeing more and more, leading some countries to compile research that has now made them pass laws to ban vapes. Imagine these things which are considered to be safer ways of taking nicotine. You can still buy tobacco in Australia, but you can no longer buy vapes. It is considered illegal because of its deleterious health effects. So why aren't the governments and I was looking into this. I was doing my research into this area, and the government is saying, and the top specialists in the respiratory physicians in this country, the consultants, they're saying, these people are the professors. These people are the ones who do these studies. They're saying, well, look, if you want to give up smoking, then vaping is okay. Vaping is not healthy. We are not saying it's healthy, so you can't sue us in the future, and you can't take away our license. But all we're saying is, if you had to choose to come off cigarettes, we recommend that only in that scenario you can do vapes for a certain period of time to get yourself off the cigarettes. And now it's being proven that actually vapes have much more hidden harms than goods. And as time goes by, I'm sure more light will be shed. But we don't have time to wait another 2 decades before we find out, as in this study where they looked at the brains of human beings from 1997 to 2024, to realize that these things are very, very extremely damaging to our bodies, to our brains, to our reproductive organs, to the growth and development of our children, and something needs to be done. Why isn't the government tackling this issue with much more aggression, with much more urgency? We want this matter to be addressed urgently. It's reaching the news, but is it reaching the desks of the ministers that make the decisions, that sign the orders, that implement change? This is where the buck seems to stop, because there are bucks that are being put into the pockets of these individuals, it seems, to make them not sign these laws and orders that will then effect change. And this is, again, something that we are seeing in the West, we're seeing it in the East, we're seeing it all over the world. And who is the person suffering? It is the average man who works hard, who pays his taxes, and who expects at least to have clean, safe drinking water and a healthy environment in which to raise their children. This is the prison that we live in, a prison without the bars. And this is the ultimate prison that they have now built in this day and age. And only the true, rightly appointed Caliph from God can take us out of this situation. If we are going to be successful, we have to recognize that until the man appointed by God is leading us in every way, we cannot find peace on this planet. We cannot find health. We cannot find anything that is worth having, because we are deprived of it. And when we make that realization, everything will fall into place and human civilization will flourish beyond our wildest dreams and imagination.
It's so fascinating that the issues that we see around the world, that we're finding in the news and the headlines that you read out, and by the way, it is quite alarming. I mean, it's so disturbing to know that there's all of this unnatural material that is part of our biological makeup now. It's part of who we have become and who we are, and it's becoming part of the children that we're producing, and it's very disturbing to know that. And the fact that these headlines are all very... The news you bring up, Dr. Irfan, a lot of it's of this it's of a diverse nature of topics, you know, when it comes to the environment, whether it's about social issues, whether it's about some kind of tyranny happening somewhere or persecution happening somewhere. And the fact is that we always end with this interesting kind of like ending, which is we need the solution, and the solution is the man from God. And a lot of people might see that as idealistic or unrealistic or overly optimistic. But the fact of the matter is that that is the only thing left that people need to try. People have been trying different things for a very long time, different methods of trying to solve these problems, different ways of trying to use the intellect, saying that our own understanding of everything will be enough. And if we just put our minds together and we put the greatest minds together, we can come up with the solution to all of these problems. But as of yet, it doesn't look like it's working. It's a very complicated matter. Everything is very intertwined with issues. Even if you find the solution, you have the problem of where are the finances for it going to come from. You have the problem of solving the corruption in the financial sector of the country or of the world in general. And then you have the problem of appeasing the banks, and you have the problem of appeasing the rich and the poor. And then you have the issue of the imbalance between the rich and the poor. How can a fallible person solve all of this? It can't happen.
It really does need one person who makes the decisions and calls the shots, because what happens now is they debate endlessly the issue that reaches them, the news that is getting to them from the scientists. It is debated between left and right, between the different political parties, and then they set up a committee, and then the committee has this, and then they have a chairperson, and then the committee goes into a vote, and it takes years. And now, from 1997, this is why I picked this particular thing. 1997. When these concerns were raised, they decided, okay, fine. And God knows, maybe it was raised even before that. Maybe it was raised in 1980, right? Knows? And then they finally decided to do the study that puts things to bed in 1997. And then from 20 years after that, they said, okay, well, now we have enough evidence to suggest, to really now make a policy change. And the policy change, where is it?
And what will happen? Now what's next? Clearly nothing. It's just going to get worse and worse. And we are saying that there are so many people in the world that agree with us when we say that God exists. And we are saying that faith in that God is the solution to this problem. But not a simple kind of solution where you just sit down and say, okay, I believe in God and now everything's going to be okay because I'm praying to that God. It is about actually standing up and doing something with your faith. There is a practical application of that faith, and that includes finding, and that actually is, the whole idea of that faith is finding the man that God has sent and supporting him in helping him make the world better. And yes, he can do it, and he is already doing it. And at the moment we are living in this little mini kind of kingdom of heaven on earth, which is a very beautiful depiction of how God's justice and mercy can resolve people's issues. And we know that it's happening because we're living it. And on a mass scale, if you expand what's happening here throughout, then it would be quite something to see. It would be something very unusual, very unique, something you haven't thought of before, because the world hasn't seen that this take place before, and it hasn't given the chance to God to actually implement his true religion. And God's true religion is what? It's allowing God to rule. That's God's religion. It's that simple. People think God's religion is how to pray, how to fast, what to wear, what not to wear, what not to eat, what not to drink. Actually, God's religion is much more important than that. It's about the fact that God has to rule. That's it. That's the whole entirety of religion.
It's the entirety of religion, and it's the curiosity of that child that questions, that answers, that only God can answer this question. He said, be like children. You know, this is a message given to us by Jesus the Messiah. And I remember when I was, and you know, trainee doctors are like children. because they come in with these thoughts that they're going to cure the world. They're very idealistic. They're going to find the cure to cancer. They're going to do all these amazing things. And very quickly they have their wings clipped by their trainers, by the more experienced doctors that have been bludgeoned into submission by their superiors in the grand scheme of things. I remember I asked a specialist consultant. Now, this is as specialist as you can get in a particular branch of medicine. I asked her, I said, you know, this Alzheimer's disease, because I saw Alzheimer's disease and I saw it as such a horrific disease. And I thought, God, I know if you inspire me, I can find a cure to this horrible thing. Imagine dying in your bed at 80 years of age, 90 years of age, and you're surrounded by loved ones. There's your son, your daughter, your wife, your daughter-in-law, your grandkids, and you don't recognize any of them.
So sad.
What a horrific way to go. And not having any of those memories whatsoever, and also just forgetting to take care of yourself, relying on somebody else to take care of you. And I just said, you know, there must be something. Let me go and ask this very experienced consultant who specializes in old age psychiatry. This was a thing. She never even did the kind of regular psychiatry or child psychiatry. No, just old age psychiatry, which is what? Which is basically Alzheimer's disease, and really those people who have these kind of schizophrenia and other types of things. But mainly her subspecialty, even within old age psychiatry, was Alzheimer's. Anyway, so that's just setting the stage. I said, you know, these neurofibrillary entanglements that happen in the brains of these people that are found in autopsy, what do you think causes them? Like, why does this damage happen? Like, what causes this problem? And I remember she thought, it's a good question. It's, we don't know. We just don't know what's doing it. I said, could it be, maybe, is it like pollution? Is it something in the environment? Is it something that they're eating? What could be the reason behind it? And she said, yes, you know, this is the thing. This is what we need to find out. I'm like, well, Alzheimer's has been here for so long. We are putting so much money in developing new drugs and new kind of diagnostic equipment. Why don't we focus on the thing that is causing the problem? Then we can take that away and then no more problem. Therefore, no more need to look for drugs.
Makes sense.
That increase these kind of different types of neurotransmitters that may help or may not help, that cause 12 different side effects that we have to then monitor the patient for and make tons of work for ourselves. Why don't we just find out the cause and put all the money behind there? And I remember she looked at me and she says, maybe this is what we need, but why don't you take up the mantle? You know? And
so
I was like,
all this time no one decided to take up the mantle for that.
Right? This is the thing. Why isn't this is the cynical thing. This is why the system is so corrupt and needs changing. The money, the people who have the money, who fund the research, are those people who want to make new drugs that we then have to pay for in order to, you know, pay for the damage that they are doing to our bodies in a different way through pollution, right? It's just endless feeding off the people, like we said, like the mosquito, which is a very pertinent kind of image, isn't it, for the way the planet that we live on. And
very apt.
It is just consuming the human being until there's nothing left to give. We are slaves in a matrix. This is the reality of the situation, and we need to wake up. We need to wake up or our suffering will continue. These people don't care about us. The people in power just use us and discard us. We mean nothing to them. They have no interest in providing for us. And if they do provide any kind of a situation for us, very quickly they will be the ones who demolish what they have built, because they don't want anyone questioning them and their rule. These are the forces of Satan. These are the evil dark forces that control the world, what the Greeks call the demiurge and its minions, and we need God in the throne as soon as possible, before our suffering will continue. Simple as that.
And isn't it ironic that we say this and we believe in this, and it's something that exists in the scriptures and exists in religious teachings other than in the call of Imam Mahdi, and that is that the world is an illusion, right? We say that all of what we see around us, it's kind of like a simulation, it's not real. And that sounds very odd to people, but it is something you find in the Holy Quran, it's something you actually do find in the Torah and the Bible, it's something you find in the Gita. You find this idea, this kind of indication that, hey, not everything is what it seems to be. And when you were talking about how people are racing behind the money and their goal is that money, it just made me realize they're racing behind something. that isn't even real, because this money is actually of no value. And that's the thing that the world is basically crazy about and desperate for and wanting so badly. It is those notes of paper that mean nothing in the end and are empty and devoid of anything. They cannot help you with anything at the end of the day. And yet it's become the reason for everything. The reason even behind whether or not something is researched in the medical field. Wait a second, where's the money going and is it going to benefit us financially or not? It's not about the people anymore. It's about notes of paper that are equal to nothing at all. So the fact that this is the world we're living in is very strange and something we have to wake up to and do something about. And the recent lecture of the Riser of Alsadiq was indeed about poverty. And we were talking about it in our last episode of Rise Up. We were discussing several parts of the lecture. The fact that poverty itself is such a problem and why it exists and what we should do about it, how we should see the problem. All of these questions were answered in that lecture and we were almost done with it. We had a little bit of it left over to go over. So perhaps we should jump back into it and complete the lecture and discuss it here.
Yeah, I think it has even answers to the problems we've raised with our news headlines.
Yes, very, very coherent message. So let's go ahead and play the first clip for the day.
There is going to be a reckoning one day. And in the, in the words of the Torah and the Bible and the words of the prophets and the messengers, the promises, the prophecies of the divine just state and the things that are to come, we find verses like in the Holy Quran where it says, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ الْوَارِثِينَ. And we want to bestow our grace and blessings upon those who were oppressed and made weak in the land, and we wish to make them imams, and we wish to make them the inheritors. And the inheritors are Muhammad and the family of Muhammad in the first degree, but also their Shia and the orphans and the widows and all of the weak, right? And there are many prophecies and verses that state that the weak or the meek will inherit the earth, that the poor people are the ones that are going to inherit the earth, that at some point something very interesting happens, right? All of those who were oppressed in the state of the shaitan are the ones whom become enabled in the divine just state. And those who were enabled in the state of the shaitan, the tables are turned and they meet the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're the ones whom are, punished in the state of God. There's a narration that states that the states are only two. There's a state, right? A dawla, a country, a governance, a government of God, and there's a government of the devil. The government of God has not come into effect. It's not come to pass. The government of God is the government in which the ruler is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that government and in that state, the poor people are enabled. And the narration states that these poor people, while they were living in the state of the shaitan, they got nothing. And anybody who gets anything in the state of shaitan does not have a share in the government of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that is taken from him as much as he's enjoyed, right? So if this is the state of the shaitan or the state of the devil now, then all of the people who are enjoying that state are actually effectively devils, right? They are the current oppressive rulers and tyrants, and they are also all of those successful, quote-unquote, business people or elite that are enjoying control over the world. In other words, if I were to believe in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, well, then I can identify this 1% elite that own more than 95% of the human wealth, I can identify them and say with a very clear conscience that these individuals are devils. These are the children of Iblis himself that he appointed, and because of their dedication to him, he has enabled them in the land, and that's why you'll find that most of them are even non-believers. They don't believe in God altogether. They're atheists. If you ask them, they'll say that that is the case, and we were just speaking about that, how in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna are having this discourse, and non-believers in a God, people that believe that things just naturally came into effect, the world just created itself, so to speak, that these people are actually devils, as identified in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna and them. Now, this does not mean that there aren't good people that grow up in the quote-unquote palace of Pharaoh, and they end up giving up their wealth to support the Jesus of the time, or to support the Qa'im, or to support the messenger in the end times. Of course, that door is open to them, as it was in the time of Jesus. When the rich man went to him, Jesus didn't close the door and say, "You're condemned." He just told him that if you want to join this ship, if you want to be with me, my people are the poor. If you would like to be with me, then you have to be with my people. You have to give them back their rights. You have to let my people go. You have to let my people's belongings go and give them back to them. And the elite are terrified of a revolution of the hungry. You find, even as days are going forward, more and more hashtags, more and more shouts, more and more mottos are being raised, and signs that state eat the rich, and people are becoming more and more disgruntled and dissatisfied with the centralization of wealth in the hands of so few. And it's a very dangerous thing that we're seeing right now, because these wealthy elite are willing to spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in the development of technologies such as artificial intelligence and robots, and they're wanting to place these robots that are operating on artificial intelligence in positions of governance, in positions that would eliminate the need for human labor. They're replacing human beings. And so we're entering into a very dark matrix type world, a Terminator type world, where you literally have, real life imitating art, and art imitating real life, where we have the sons of the devils allowing for tens of thousands of children to die on a day-to-day basis, and they'd rather spend their money in ways that would ensure that they can control the masses, and that poor people would never stand a chance to revolt and take back the riches and the wealth that was already ordained to be their rights by God Almighty according to the scriptures, and yet it was stolen from them by a group of elite that don't amount to more than 1% of the human population. Can you imagine that? These people that have contemplated and thought about the possibility of eliminating and were responsible for mass genocide. I mean, even if you look into, who was funding Hitler? You're German. Who was funding Hitler? It was the banks that were funding Hitler. It was the rich people that were funding Hitler. So if you believe that Hitler was bad, and you believe that genocide is bad, then who was the one that was funding him, and for what purpose does that serve? It is a group of 1% on the population that are willing to eliminate 95% of the population so that they can continue to live at the same standard that they're living at. They're the ones that are responsible for funding every single war. This 1%, if they were to be removed, if they were to not be enabled in the way that they are enabled today, 95% of the planet would be in a state of great prosperity. In fact, the entire planet would be in a state of prosperity so long as they followed somebody who was truly ordained by God and had humanity's interest at mind.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, people have this wrong idea of happiness or how to be happy. They think it comes by hoarding stuff or oppressing others, and it's really the wrong assumption of what the default state on the planet should be, that God wanted everybody to be happy. And it's an easy thing, really. Like if you say, Father, that poverty would be eliminated or the needs of people, and that it's enough to live together peacefully, that's enough to be happy, and then there's nothing to chase after anymore. Like,
yes,
even Elon Musk should know that.
It's very fascinating how this particular segment really beautifully links to what we were talking about earlier, and that is that the planet is in need of help. There has to be this person who knows how to take care of the problems and find solutions to those problems. That person needs to be enforced by God and have the inspiration given to him from a divine source, because the issues at large are extremely difficult to solve for a fallible human being. In fact, impossible to solve for fallible human beings. And clearly it is very much mentioned in scriptures, as we mentioned in the last episode, that the idea of hoarding wealth, the idea of holding on to gold and silver and to keep it from people, because that's what it means. It means you're keeping it from other human beings. It's not just a matter of, oh, well, I have earned this much money and this is all belonging to me. Alsadiq, from him, his peace is quite clear. He says you are taking the share of others by doing so.
Yes. And the way Alsadiq tackles problems, even at this stage, is really truly inspiring, and anybody can learn from him. If you really want to learn, you observe the way he operates. It's a beautiful way. It's breaking it down, so it simplifies. Here's the thing that I learned from Alsadiq. He brings people together. If there's a particular problem, let's say in my field, in the healthcare field, he'll have a couple of the people who have backgrounds in healthcare, doctors, nurses, and so on and so forth, and he'll be like, okay, so this is the problem. What is the question? Let's say this is our issue. This is the information that you guys have about it. All right, now let's make it simple. This is the solution. He simplifies it. He doesn't overcomplicate anything. He simplifies it to its simplest possible term, and then he's like, get to work.
SubhanAllah.
Sort it out. Do X, you do Y, you do Z, then report back to me, and then we'll see where we're at and how we can proceed further. All right, thank you for your time. Get on with the work. This is his approach, and it's a beautiful approach.
It always works.
It takes the ego out of the equation. You know, it doesn't matter if you know some big words, if you are a PhD in this. He doesn't want a 3-year break to write a thesis and do field research on the matter. No, there is already enough information in front of us, and if there isn't, we'll use the information we have, and we'll take it from there. Let's take action. Let's do these steps and come back, and then we'll do some more steps if necessary, and we can do this and do that depending on what happens. Just keep moving, keep going on. Forward momentum is everything. This is the way, you know, it's a simple way to do it, but it's a great way to do it. It's the most effective way to do it, where there isn't this long 25-year-old process before we can be convinced in our mind that these plastics are destroying our brain and causing dementia. It's just about getting stuff done as soon as possible. And I think we have a caller on the line, don't we?
Yes, we do. We have Brother Zygmunt on the line. Yes, let's see if we can connect him. Let's see if it works.
Yes. So this is good. We want people to call in. We want people to engage with us. This is an interactive show. I want more people to pick up the phone and dial in. I want people who disagree with us to dial in. I want people who agree with us, who have an alternative point of view on these things, to call in. What would you like us to talk about on the show? What do you think is an interesting topic? This is the place where you can send us your comments. You can ring directly and speak to us live on the air. Put us on the spot.
Tell us why we're wrong, that the solution to mankind's problems is the Spirit of God within a man. And tell us your better solution. Let's see if Brother Zygmunt can hear us yet. Assalamu alaikum, brother. All right, we need a minute just to get it connected, which is fine. So, in terms of what we were hearing right there from that particular piece of the lecture, from that segment, one thing that really stuck out was the fact that a lot of evil has happened on the planet. People are very much aware of it. History has shown its pages to be very bloody, very distressing.
Yep.
And why is that the case? Are these accidents? Are these mishaps? Are these misconceptions of people that turned out to be naive? No. These were intentional acts of evil that were committed, but they weren't committed so easily. Brother Zygmunt is on the line. All right, we'll go back to that point in a second. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, my dear ones. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. It's good to hear from you, brother. How's it going? Can you hear us?
Alhamdulillah, I have some connection problems, but I hope that now I hear you, yes. So I just wanted to share with you something that I saw. It's about the allegory of Plato, which is one of the returned prophets in our day and age. Mm-hmm. Peace be upon him.
Peace be upon him.
And he has this idea of the allegory of the cave.
Yes.
And I found it in one of the Milka commercials when there is a man who is going on an adventure. Okay. He finds out how the chocolate is being made, and then he comes back to his town and he tries to explain it in the shop to someone, but it seems so odd to the woman that she don't believe him, and she take him as a crazy man. So I just wanted to share this, like
modern day analogy of Plato's cave.
So it's very interesting because I found out this happens a lot, I think, with a lot of people when they find out this call. And I wanted to say we are all in this together, and peace and blessings upon all the believers, and have a wonderful day.
Oh, God bless you, Zygmunt.
I love you guys.
We love you very much as well, and we're so happy that you actually reached out and told us about that. That's actually a really cool modern day example of Plato's cave and the sentiment behind it. Exactly, that is what it is. Thanks for calling in, Zygmunt.
Yes. You can imagine people...
Thank you.
Thank you, Zygmunt. Thank you. You can imagine people, mixing up their sugar with I don't know what and making their sweets and candy, and then some random guy comes along and says, hey, this stuff that grows on trees, it's called cocoa. It's this disgusting stuff that if you eat it, it makes you want to puke. But actually, if you want to add to it some milk and maybe some of this and some of that,
a lot of sugar,
it turns into this delectable treat. And I think you will become the richest man in Babylon if you apply it. So
they'd call you crazy, right? Until they know.
Yeah.
I think that was a really interesting thing that Brother Zygmunt brought up there, because it's true. That's exactly what's happening. We are saying that there can be a kingdom of heaven. That's something that people are not used to hearing about. It's not something you're raised to know about. People haven't heard before that there could be a man called Alsadiq who would be written in the will of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would establish a kingdom of heaven, and it's not just a new idea, but in fact prophesied in books of old. And when you hear about that, you might think to yourselves, well, what on earth? This is so new and so strange and so different. But that's why those who follow these ideas and are the first to support in new ideologies that seem new to them, but they are in fact authenticated in scriptures of old. Those who are brave enough to do so, like Salman al-Farsi, like Abu Dhar in his time, and other people who were supporting the prophets and messengers, those are the pioneers of truth, and those are the torchbearers and the ones who are immortalized in the history.
Indeed, and in the movie The Matrix, when they asked the creators, they said, that scene where Neo comes to see the character of Morpheus, and he describes to him what is the Matrix, and then he uses certain words, and he says, well, at the end of he says, you cannot really know the Matrix until you see it for yourself. So he gives that description, and the creators said that was really the allegory of the cave. They were using Plato's cave to try to explain in language where a person who has been in the matrix and out of the matrix, in the cave and out of the cave, the fake reality, the matrix, and the true reality outside of it. And then Morpheus comes back and he tells Neo about it, and Neo shakes his head and he thinks he understands, but he looks very perplexed. And then he says, you can only know it until you see it for yourself. And then, of course, he gives him the option to enter the cave, or rather to leave the cave, in the form of the red pill, which because with it ensues pain, and of course red is pain and suffering, or the blue pill, where he goes back to sleep and wakes up in his bed, back in the cave, in the comfort zone, and as unenlightened as he was before. And we know that you have to take that red pill because it is suffering. And Plato says in the allegory of the cave that when you leave the cave, because you've been kept in the dark for so long, the brilliant light of the sun is painful for your eyes, and it's difficult to endure the truths and realities that exist in the world of forms versus the world of shadows that you've been living in your whole life. And you experiencing reality in that intensity can be painful, and hence the red pill. So these things, these modern examples are really important. Plato's cave is an amazing allegory. It still lives in this day and age, but I think it is really important to talk about newer ways in order to connect with people who are from this generation, who would understand the matrix, for example, or the making of chocolate. Somebody who's describing the process for people who are completely alien to it. This will definitely connect more with the crowd, and this is what Ali and I have. This is our job. We have to think of ways to make the allegory of the cave, or Plato's cave, more accessible to the youth and the new generations that have grown up in a different world in the digital age. So really appreciate that, Brother Zygmunt, and it's inspired me and Alia to think of more creative ways to get these amazing allegories of the prophets and the messengers into the hearts and minds of the people.
Yeah, that's a very good job description actually of what we do, isn't it? That's exactly the point, and that's what Jesus Christ was doing when he was speaking in parables. And he said that there will be a man who will come one day after me who will not speak in parables. He will be very plain with the truth. And I think it's quite safe to say the School of Divine Mysteries is a very direct, straightforward, black and white truth that's been presented.
Yeah, very much.
And going back to that point that we were making earlier about the fact that history has been a very bloody mess, where people have seen so much pain and suffering, and when you read through the books of history, it is very difficult. In fact, I was thinking about the other day the fact that one of my children, she was reading about the Industrial Revolution and the torment of the suffering of the children in that era, and how they were really put through some serious abuse, and the effect that abuse had. And she asked a very simple question. She said, as a child does say, very outright, she said, why? Why would people do that to children? And I had to struggle to find a way to describe to this very innocent, pure mind the idea that people would not care about how a child would feel and would care more about the profit that they could make. And this is what's strange, isn't it? You look at that history, you look at the fact that it's not human, it's not normal to be so abusive, so horrific in your actions towards one another. But history does exist in that way. And why does it exist in that way? As Alsadiq from his piece mentions in that particular segment, he mentioned Adolf Hitler, he mentioned World War II, and he said what was perpetrating it? It was quite simply money. It was quite simply the enforcement of those who had ability in the land, those who had resources that enabled that such horrific things happen. And without that enforcement, so many bad things wouldn't have happened. And this is something to think about, and something to step back and wonder, where is the money going, and why is the money so important, and what can we do to basically take ourselves away from these horrifying chains that we are held down by. Money should not be the reason for everything in this world or in any world, and it is at the moment. So waking up to that is something that the Riser of Alsadiq is doing. He's explaining things for what they are and showing us, look, you can make a choice. You can pretend that you don't have an impact on the world, but you do. So which impact are you going to have?
Yeah, a wise man once said, money is not the root of all evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. And this is basically an attachment to something that's a figment of the imagination, essentially. Money, what is money? It's just paper. It's just paper that has some value attached by it by someone. who has put a seal of some description on it, and it's basically just the same as this. It's just paper. That's all it is, people.
And it causes deaths, and it causes genocides, and it causes
suicides, wars
and suicides, and how incredibly insane is that? Yeah. That is absolute insanity. And I think we did have one last segment left of that lecture.
Yeah,
so
we can finish that one. It would be awesome.
Make sure we squeeze it in before the end of the show. Let's go ahead and watch it.
We're gonna do a full episode about happiness one day. But in summary, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you that true happiness is achieved when other people are happy. We find happiness, human beings were created in such a way that we truly become happy when we see other people happy. To grant happiness to others and to do for others is the source of human beings' happiness. If human beings were taken out of the rat maze that they were placed in, if they were taken out of the guinea pig wheel that they are placed in by the elite, where they have to constantly chase and put all of their energy and their thought and their focus into the daily bread, right, and the sustenance and their needs that they need on a day-to-day basis, if they were provided those needs, if they just got that $35 per person per day, if they got their 3 meals, if they got their clothing, if they each and every one of them had a house to live in, if they weren't occupied anymore, if the dollar became nothing more than a piece of paper for them, if gold and silver lost its value, the human being would still remain unsatisfied and unhappy, but he would be comfortable. And now he would have the ability to seek happiness, and he would only find happiness in doing for others. And so the human being in the divine just state, having all of his basic needs taken care of, he would begin to want to serve mankind. And the new currency which would emerge would be a currency of services, accomplishments, all right? A sense of pride, a sense of satisfaction. That would be the new sought after gold and silver that people would desire. And so they would, each and every one of them, compete with one another, not in hoarding wealth, but in virtues. And they would compete with one another in establishing things or creating things that would further assist mankind in achieving its collective goals of prosperity on the planet.
Yeah, you taught us, Father, that everybody has a God-given gift, just anything. And I used to wonder, like, how is it possible that a person has a perfect job? And is it possible that jobs that I wouldn't like at all, that there's somebody who likes them? And I found in your, mini divine just state so far, even though globally it's very big, that there's always somebody who loves the job and they're like so good at it. And it made me relax like year by year. And I had to put down like all my wrong assumptions about life, really. I just found that if we let go more, that God already had a plan for everything, for everyone. And it's more about like relaxing into the situation. And God would facilitate for us if we can't function in a place, that we get to a place where we can function. And it's not that like complicated. With you, like nothing is hard or complex. While other leaders, they would teach the society that guiding a society is extra hard. You can only do it if you force the people all the time to do what they have to do against their will. And that's then for the greater good. But I didn't find that true here.
Yeah, and I think that you can see in the example of our community here that the reality that we are living in proves exactly what you just stated. For you find here in the community that we live in, our little mini divine just state in which we share in all things and nobody has to worry about their daily bread. We find that there are people that really love to go on television, on our satellite stations and talk and discuss and be there for the people, right?
Yeah.
And they're very charismatic, and there are other people that hate that. They're shy. They have a different nature. They rather work behind the scenes transcribing, right? Or editing or working behind the camera. You have other people that are passionate about, for example, driving, and they provide these services for other members of the community, happily so. You have yet other individuals that are passionate about cooking or baking. You have yet another group of believers that are passionate about protecting and serving in that way, and making sure that the borders to our gate are secure, and that we and our children are safe from any invaders or thieves or child molesters or whatever else dangers exist out there. And yet another group of people are passionate about cleaning, and they love to go forward and ensure that the place smells good and the place looks good and everything is arranged in a nice way. And the other people are passionate about beautifying the place that we call home, and they paint the beautiful images that we see here in the basilica and all around. And so, yes, human beings will naturally find something in which they are passionate about doing. And if they find that there is a particular job that nobody wants to do, they will take great pride in doing that particular activity and service and excelling at that in order that they would shine. They take it as an opportunity to really shine in the community, doing something that nobody else would want to do. And so if we take that and we, place it on a mass scale in a divine just state, we'll find that people will naturally do these things. They'll fill these jobs very quick and peacefully so, and without any suffering.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if people treat each and every one as their own selves and keep that in mind, and they focus on eliminating poverty and focus on sharing in the wealth that they have, collectively we can create a paradise on earth, and collectively we can together, all of us, put out the fires of hell, and collectively we can enter into a higher realm, a higher state, live on a greater planet, go into an everlasting Garden of Eden in the hereafter. Thank you so much, Runa, for joining me, and inshallah I look forward to many other episodes together.
Thank you, Father.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
A very beautiful ending to that very incredible lecture, and the idea that if we all were to truly see ourselves as the other, which we are meant to be doing, then it will no longer be even a matter of serving one another, but rather serving ourselves, because our own interests lie in the happiness of our brother or sister, in the prosperity of the people around us. That is what we yearn for, what we long for, what we work for, and in that sentiment and with that belief, we could make such a beautiful world, and we wouldn't even feel like it was work.
Yes, and listening to Alsadiq speaking, it brought several things into my mind. And the first thing was that the current economic system that exists is the result of a deficient intellect, a defective intellect, and the one that Alsadiq, the vision that he is bringing to the world is from a perfected intellect, where people take great joy in service, and that in itself is payment for their service when they see how it helps their fellow man, their fellow brother and sister, when they are doing some things in their service. There's a reciprocal kind of benefit that happens in that for example, I'm a plumber, so I come and fix your faucet, and you in return give me bread. And this type of thing creates this effect within the hearts and minds of the believers that we are all here in service of one another. And the joy and the pleasure and the spirituality of this is what causes us to evolve into higher beings, which is the only reason, the main reason why we're here. We're here to evolve spiritually. And we can only do that if we have conditions of stability and peace. And this is why it's the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, because enlightenment can only come when there is a state of peace and not a state of chaos as currently exists from the defective intellect of the shayateen, the devils that are ruling the earth in this day and age. When we support the man appointed by God, we will have peace and light on this earth. This is the message of this religion. We are saying it on a daily basis on our various platforms. We are inviting all people to come join us and help to bring this vision of the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad to fruition and to achieve success together as one, as a human family. This is a beautiful message. We've seen what the evil forces want to do. They want to create division. They want 1% to own 95% of the resources and assets on this planet. And the riser of the family wants to distribute the wealth equally among the people so that all people can live lives of dignity and prosperity. It's a no-brainer. Anybody who is watching this last installment of the Divine School of Mysteries must be thinking, well, where did we go from Hinduism into this topic? But everything is related.
Yes.
And the idea of monotheism plays out in many different facets. And here, Alsadiq shows how monotheism plays out in the economics of the world and how wealth and prosperity is the outcome of submission to the man appointed by God.
Absolutely. Very well said. If you look at those previous lectures, you'll see that he mentions how that super soul, that is the complete collection of God's attributes, which is quite an entity. Imagine that super soul that is supposed to be encompassing all of creation and exists in all of us. And we are meant to be seeing in our brother and sister that divine aspect, that sanctity that exists there, that peace of the light that God wants us to see when we look at them. And then it's no longer a matter of how do you benefit me, but rather how can I serve you? And a world that looks like that cannot be a bad world. It can only be a beautiful world. Selflessness can never lead to destruction if it is being practiced under the guidance of the leader sent by God. And the world right now is not in a place where people are promoting selflessness, but we will achieve our goal of creating a place where a person can live selflessly and apply God's teachings without being destroyed for it and without having to struggle to survive. And we've come to the end, I guess, of the show.
We have.
And time flew by, and we had a lot of things we wanted to talk about, but we will make sure we talk about them tomorrow. So make sure you stay tuned, or you tune in really rather, tomorrow morning for Rise Up. Until tomorrow, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.